Sometimes you have on an Excel sheet columns that have information all put together and you would like to split it. You probably know that there is a tool in Excel that can do that, but the problem with that tool is that it's a little bit clumsy and you have to do a lot of steps, so VBA might be your solution. Let me first show you what one of the drawbacks is of what I just discussed. You can select a column, and then when you go to Data and you do Text to Columns, unfortunately, if you do this, then first of all you have to tell what the delimiter is, and let's say in this case it's the dash, so then I have to type a dash there. Next, you can determine here whether you want that column to be text or a date or general or whatever, so that's a lot of steps extra. And finally, when you click on Finish, you will get a little surprise and says you didn't prepare your work. You don't have any empty columns to the right where we can put the split information. So I'm going to cancel it. In other words, it's much better to do this with VBA. Let's do that on this sheet. And we are going to create a VBA code that we can call up with Control-Shift-S or whatever shortcut you assign. Let me first show you what the tool would do for us. Say I want this to be split, so I do Control-Shift-S, I select the column, Control-Shift-S in this case, OK it. My separator is a comma by default, and I click on OK. It automatically includes an extra column and it splits the information. I can do the same for that phone number, Control-Shift-S. The entire column. This time the separator is a dash. I click on OK, and it's created 2 new columns and split that phone number. It also took care of the leading zeros. In the tool, Excel's tool, you had to do that explicitly, and I don't even have to show you anymore, but let's do it for a moment. This is another step and it creates 3 new columns. So what is the background code? We declare a series of variables. Then we ask with an input box which is the range you want to select. We store that in O range. We use the input box from the application, not from VBA. Select the entire column. That argument is optional. And then we put by default in there, if the user had already selected cells, the column for instance, take the address, and don't forget to put in the last argument, which is called the type, that is number 8, so it returns a range. We store that in O range. Then we just check that if the count of O range happens to be 1, that means you haven't selected the whole column, then we tell you to do that. And then we exit the sub. Then we ask with another input box, what is your separator? I use by default a comma, but you just put in there what you usually have as a separator. And you can still change it, for this is just the default value. Then we are going to check in that O range the first cell down, which is in row 2 and 1, because there is probably a label or a header. If not, adjust that code, store that in stest, and then we are going to find out how many columns we need. Let's take as an example that this was the entry, so that means we need 2 extra columns. So we are going to test where are the separators. If there is a separator that we had asked for in the middle of stest, at position I, first 1, 2, 3, 4, and we do that until we reach the end of stest, which is all these characters together counted. Then we set I count plus 1. So now we know, after going through this loop, how many extra columns we need. So in this case we have two commas, so we are going to run from I equals 1 to I count sep, which is in this case 2 commas. Then we insert an entire column, and then we are going to loop through all those entries to begin with Avery, Mary, 97,000. So we loop from n equals 2, for the one is the label probably, or the header. We take from the current region of O range the number of cells, so we run up to the last entry, and then we talk to O range the first cell, N2, column 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we store that content in S rest, which happens to be Avery, Mary, 97, etc. Then we count backwards from the last column to the first column, so that is I count sep to 1, step minus 1, that means we are going backwards. We put in S short the following formula. So if that is the first time in the last column, remember we go backwards from the last column to the previous column, if that is that number, then the length of S rest of the whole thing, Avery, Mary, etc., is 19, and then we look what is the position number of S, comma, or the dash, in this case the comma. Trim S rest, that means take the spaces off, if there are spaces before or at the end, trim it, make it clean, and then find the position of the comma, that is from the back on, in string reversed. So that's position 12, that is that position here. So this, in the second run, when we run that again, it will say now we are looking for Mary at the end, for we take the last part of S rest at the position where the comma ends, in this case after Avery, so that is 12 minus 6, and we get Mary. Then if there is still a comma left, then we take the left of S short, the total length minus 1, that is Mary in this case. Then we detect whether there are any leading zeros by checking the first left character. If that is the case, then we set the number format to this, which means text. Okay. Then we enter into the cell that we are talking to, offset 0, I, that is in column 3, 2, 1, backwards. We enter first this number, and then if we run that all later on, then we put Mary in there. Then we trim the left part of S rest. So in the first case that will be Avery, Mary, so there is no currency involved anymore. And the second time there is no Mary involved anymore. And then if the right of is the separator, if there is still a separator left at the end, then cut one position off, minus 1. First it will be Avery, Mary, and the second time Avery. Then the for next loop is done. Then we check one more time. If there is a leading 0, then make that entire column text. And then finally we put in the original cell, so no row offset, we put from S rest after we convert it to a string, and we replace Avery, Mary, etc. with Avery. Otherwise that stays in that first column. And with next n. And finally we make the current region of O range, the entire column autofit, and we are so kind to redirect the user to the first cell of that range. And that is what the code is going to do. I showed you already how it works. Let me do it one more time. If I do it for this one, Ctrl-Shift-S, it will split that enormously fast and you don't have to do anything else. You probably need to know more about VBA. Excel VBA is a very powerful tool. If you buy this CD-ROM, you will get 3 modules that discuss all this kind of issues. Maybe you find the price of that CD-ROM kind of expensive. It's not really the case, because you buy this for your co-employees, for your associates, for your company even, and they can all copy that CD-ROM, put it on their computer, and they get all these valuable tools. You can find that CD-ROM at genesispc.com.